The sun will come out pronto.
Is this an Annie episode?
Maybe. On this episode of Moving Panels, we discuss Annie 2014. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. I'm your host, Leapin' Lizards. This isn't Laramy, it's Bethany Wells. And joining me today in the co-host chair is my little girl, Ruby Wells. How are you today, Ruby?
Good.
Good. Today, we are celebrating your 10th birthday. So you decided that what you wanted to discuss for your birthday was Annie, the 2014 edition. So what is your knowledge and what is your background with this movie?
All I want to say right now is that it's not like the Annie that Mama grew up with. It's more modern and kinda. It was in 2014, the year after I was born. So I kind of definitely grew up with it.
That's for sure. And do you know anything about the comic strip?
I read some of it, not all of it, though.
No, I wasn't able to read all of it. It was very extensive, but so you do know some of it.
Like the Great Depression one, I read some of it. It's really weird.
Yes. So personally, my background with Annie was originally from the 1982 movie. Yeah. My aunt sent me a copy on VHS for my birthday. Do you even know what a VHS is?
Yes.
All right. Doing something. And I just watched it over and over and over again. And I saw the new Annie movie with you. So that's my history with this movie.
It's a really good movie, honestly.
It is better than I think some people give it credit for. But we'll discuss that more later. So I'm going to give you a little brief history on the comic strip and the movie together.
Okay.
So Annie, the character, has been around for a super long time. In fact, next year, she will be 100 years old.
Holy.
The Annie comic strip debuted on August 5th, 1924 in the New York Daily News and was created by cartoonist Harold Gray. He's an interesting character. So in April of 1931, Annie became a radio show where she was used to sell Ovaltine to children. Do you remember? I know we don't watch this movie a lot at Christmas time, but you know the movie A Christmas Story where the little boy wants a gun?
Oh, yeah.
And he is desperate to get this thing in the mail from a radio show that he listens to, Little Orphan Annie.
Huh.
And then he finds out it was all a big scam to sell Ovaltine.
Oh.
So she was one of the first and most successful characters to advertise over the radio. In the 1930s, there were a few movies that featured the characters, but the big turning point for Annie, what I think is the reason why we're still talking about her now, is that in 1977, Annie was adapted into a Broadway show, which is how most people still know who she is. There have been 3 film adaptations of the Broadway show, including this one from 2014. And brief history of that movie, Will Smith and Jay-Z originally planned to make the movie in 2011. They wanted it to feature Will Smith's daughter, Willow, as Annie. Unfortunately, by the time they were able to make the movie, Willow was way too old to play Annie.
Like 21 or something?
No, well, I mean, it was only 3 years difference. But she went from being like 10 or maybe even 11 to being like 14. So that doesn't really work for Annie.
I see.
Yes. So was any of that news to you, or?
Yes.
Now we are going to discuss the characters, Annie. Mm-hmm. What do you like about Annie?
Like Annie?
The character Annie.
Okay.
Is specifically in this movie, but just the character overall.
I like in the movie we're talking about, the 2014, I like how she's more optimistic than the original Annie. She's a little goofy.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how, like, stuff that happens affects her just, like, a little bit, but she can handle it.
Right.
And she doesn't try to run away.
Exactly.
Sometimes.
Well, okay. So the character of Annie in the movie that we're watching is played by Quvonjene Wallace. She is the all-time youngest person to be nominated for an Oscar for her performance in, not this movie, Beasts of the Southern Wild. She was 9 years old.
Huh.
And she auditioned for the movie when she was 5. And she is the first Black actor to ever portray Annie on screen.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I think she does a really good job doing Annie. She does a lot, she is an Oscar-nominated actor. Yeah. So that, I think, says a lot. But, so yeah, it was very interesting. So the character Annie was originally going to be a boy named Otto in the comic strip.
No.
Well, they changed her to a girl because Harold Gray, the writer, said that there were too many comics featuring boys, and so he made her a girl so that it would get more attention. He would stand out.
Including Superman.
Yes. So she was portrayed to be pretty much the exact opposite of the famous orphan Oliver, a character written by Charles Dickens. She's tough, she's smart, she fights her own battles, and she never takes anything from anyone, and she usually saves herself. Which I think is a character trait that kind of continues through every adaptation that I have seen. What would you think?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So her character is a political statement by Harold Gray.
What does that mean?
So Gray used her to kind of preach a message. He had a message when he was writing the comic strip Annie. And the comic strip originally came out during a time when people were down on their luck. They were struggling financially. And he was showing through her the proper way to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Have you heard that term?
No.
Well, it's just a term to say, like, when you're down and out, you're not doing well financially, you're struggling, you pull yourself up. You get yourself back to a financially stable way to be.
Okay.
So, yes. We'll move on to Oliver Warbucks, or Daddy Warbucks. In this movie, his name is
Mr. Stacks.
Will Stacks. So, the funny thing about him, the character, Warbucks, that means he made money off of the war. That's where he got all of his money from, was war. And then Will Stacks, William is also, the word Bill is short for William for some reason. And then Stacks, so like stacks of money. So both of their names are some sort of play on making money.
I see that now.
So the character in this movie was played by Jamie Foxx. Daddy Warbucks made his debut in the comics in September of 1924. He is a quote-unquote self-made man in the comics. He has a wife who does not like Annie. He has a very strict view on the world and how that works. And the comic strip is written to say that this is the only correct way to live your life. Now, you...
What?
Well, you read that one story that you were talking to me about in the Great Depression. Do you want to talk about that strip?
So, what happens is Annie starts getting homeschooled by a tutor, and Daddy Warbucks, is like, wow, she's doing so great on this, but she finds her books, and it's like tricks on how to do multiplication. And he's like, what? Where are her math books? Where are her social studies books? Where are these things? And he threatens to fire the tutor because he's not teaching her what he grew up learning.
Yeah, he wants her taught the proper way to do math.
Yeah, and I'm like, dude, in this time, that was the modern way to do it.
Yeah. So Daddy Warbucks, that character, he's usually bald. He always wears he always has some sort of like formal attire, a tuxedo.
Oh, that reminds me of something in the movie. Where we find out that he's actually bald and just wearing a toupee.
Yes. So he and Annie are kindred spirits. They both succeed with hard work and old-fashioned work ethic. What is that? How does that make you feel? What do you think about that?
I don't know, honestly.
Okay. So the next character that is in both the movie and the comic strip is Sandy.
Yeah, I love Sandy because he's a dog.
Well, that was my next note. Sandy is played by a dog.
Yeah!
The character of Sandy first appeared in the comic strip in January of 1925. So like in the movies, and this is in every movie, Annie rescues Sandy from a gang of abusive boys.
Yeah, and then it's like, stop following me. I don't want you.
Yes. So the next character, this character's not truly in the comic strip, but she is in most adaptations, and she's a major character. So I do want to talk about her a little bit, is Miss Hannigan.
Oh, yeah. You don't like her background.
Well, so Miss Hannigan is played by Cameron Diaz, who I think is a wonderful actor. I just don't think that she can sing.
Sorry if you're listening to this. She's probably clicked off it by now.
Yeah. So she knows.
Oh, gosh.
This was her last movie that she was in before she retired from acting.
Really?
Really?
I didn't know she even retired because I don't know her that well.
Yes. Well, you know the movie Shrek? The Shrek movies? Fiona?
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. She voices Fiona.
Well,
So Miss Hannigan, her character that is in the comic strip, that character's name is Miss Asthma. She is the orphan lady, the lady that runs the orphanage. She takes care of the kids. She's not nice. She's cruel to Annie. She's cruel to the other orphans. And that's
obviously.
Really, so it's a pretty clear, but it's not, Miss Hannigan from the comic strips. That's just, she was born from the Broadway show.
Got it.
The next character we're going to discuss is Grace.
One of my favorites.
What a weird character to be your favorite.
I don't know. I just like her character. It's fun.
Okay, great. Well, so Grace is played by Rose Byrne. Mm-hmm. She is, you would know her from the Peter Rabbit movies.
Ah.
Yeah, she was yeah, there's not really an equivalent for her character in the comic strip. The closest you could say would be Mrs. Warbucks. So Daddy Warbucks' wife.
I never saw that when I was reading it.
So that character, though, is just the complete opposite of who Grace is. So Mrs. Warbucks, she was a social climber, so she was considered nouveau riche. Have you ever heard of that term?
No.
It means new money. That's somebody who was not born with a lot of wealth, but has obtained a bunch of wealth.
Ah.
And they are trying to get in with the high society people. She hates Annie.
Oh.
She even returns Annie to the orphanage when Daddy Warbucks goes on a trip to Siberia.
My jaw just dropped to the floor.
So, they eventually get back together. A lot of the comic strips end with Annie, running away. When she's not with Daddy Warbucks, she's running away. Which is funny, because in the movies, she's always running away.
Yeah.
The next character, the final character I want to talk about, is Harold Gray. Why does that name sound familiar to you?
I don't know.
So, Harold Gray is the mayor that Will Stax is running against in the movie. He's played by Peter Von Wagner, and he is named after the man that wrote the comic strip, Harold Gray.
Oh.
Yes.
You just told me that.
So, yes, the closest equivalent to the comics is probably President Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Yeah, definitely.
Harold Gray hated FDR. He hated him so much that when he was elected president for his 4th term, Gray killed off Daddy Warbucks. And he sent Annie to live in an abusive home where she had to work as a maid. And she was also framed for her mistress's murder. She was later acquitted, but yeah.
My jaw just dropped to the floor again.
And this is how petty Harold Gray was. People were begging him. They're like, we hate this. Please, please bring Daddy Warbucks back. Please help Annie. This is terrible. And it was only after Roosevelt died in 1945 that Warbucks returned, stating that he had staged his death and he and Annie could then live happily together.
Oh, okay. I guess.
So like I said, Harold Gray had very political leanings, I would say. He had a statement to make with his... He did not like FDR. He didn't like the programs that he set up during the Great Depression. And this was his way of kind of lashing out at that.
Hmm.
So, final question. Or not the final question. Here's the question. Who do you want to see again? And who do you wish would find out what happens when you look in Miss Hannigan's medicine cabinet?
I hope that one of the kids looks in there and then tells the person who comes there like every week.
Let's focus on the question. What's a character you would like to see more of in the movie, and what's a character you wish wouldn't even be in the movie?
I wish that the bodyguard from the first movie would be in it. Like the guy that's magic, and that was fun.
Yeah.
I liked
him. So you liked him. And then who do you wish was barely in this movie at all?
Oh, Lou.
Lou?
He's very useless character.
Yeah, I agree.
Very useless.
Yeah, Lou was not my favorite. Lou is this character that is like pining after Miss Hannigan for
it's kind of
for no reason
by the
Mr. Bundles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she actually liked Mr.
Yeah, she was into Mr. Bundles. He was not into her. In this, he is super into Miss Hannigan, whereas she has nothing's want.
Did like her.
I never picked up on that. I always felt like Mr. Bundles was just like, oh, this one is freaking me out. And he only pretended to like her so that it would distract her while he was trying to hide Annie.
Oh.
Yeah.
Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and listen to an 80s Flick Flashback podcast once in a while, you could miss it. Do you love movies of a certain age? Do you miss the days of VHS tapes, VCRs, and the video rental stores? Does the thought of another 80s movie being remade seem inconceivable? My name is Tim Williams. I'm the creator and host of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. On each episode, I'm joined by guest co-hosts to discuss one of the many movies released in the 1980s. We share our first-time watch memories, our favorite scenes, and even learn some behind-the-scenes stories about the cast and crew along the way. New episodes are released every other Friday on your favorite podcasting platform. So make like a tree, get out of here, and go listen to an excellent episode of the 80s Flick Flashback podcast. The ad is over. Go home. Go.
So now we are moving on to the moving panels portion of the podcast. What scenes do you feel like came from a comic book, and what scenes do you feel like were made just for the movie?
I don't really know how to explain that part. Yeah. That's hard. I think the part that was actually like that was just for the movie was like when she's singing the song Opportunity.
Yeah. And
what I think was from the comic books, what I think it would be the part where she tries to run away.
Yeah.
Like run.
All of her running away and trying to find her way home and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the comic strip and the movies don't really have a ton of parallels. Like we said earlier, the way she gets Sandy is pretty consistent throughout every retelling. Other than that, there's not a ton that go together. The comic strip is very based on the time that it was written. And so that's, Great Depression, what they were going through during that time. Here's some things that I found that are in both versions. Annie is spunky and tough and optimistic. She always stands up to herself and is tougher than most kids.
How she just confesses that she can't read. She's not like...
Well, she doesn't straight up confess.
I know.
Yeah.
But she's like, I don't have to tell you, you're not my actual dad. And then he's like, well, I would like to know so I can help you with it. And she's like, fine, I can't read.
Right. She can get herself out of most situations, and she does it with confidence. Mm-hmm. And she usually does the right thing.
Yeah.
Like when approached with a situation, she does what's right.
Definitely.
I will say that in this interpretation, Annie is not nearly as violent.
Oh, yeah. She was very violent in the first movie.
She was violent in the comic strips. Annie is often, she solves her problems with her fists.
Yeah.
This Annie is more smart, and she uses, cleverness and outsmarts the people around her in order to solve her issues.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So, Mr. Warbucks, or Stacks, he is a rich political figurehead. That's a tough word to say. He's super stuck in his ways, but has a soft spot for Annie. The difference is that in the comic, his ways are preached as though those are the only ways for a person to succeed.
Yeah.
I will say stuff that's based on the Broadway production, the 1977 Broadway show, including this movie, it more turns what he believes on his head. And it's as though like him loving Annie and welcoming her into his life softens him, and he becomes a better person. He becomes more flexible in his thinking, and that is what leads him to make the better decisions. Whereas in the comic strip, he's more just like, well, sonny girl, let me tell you the right way to do everything.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. But, that doesn't quite work for a modern audience, I would say. You don't really see that much in movies. It's different. All right. Okay. A more obvious parallel is that Annie's home life is always extremely bad when she isn't with Warbucks or Stacks. In the comic strip, she's often running away and is forced to work as a housemaid and is even accused of murder.
Why does that make me laugh?
I don't know. So,
probably
just
how you said it.
Probably because I'm so funny.
Sometimes.
Thank you. Anyways, so as you might be aware, I don't know if you know, but kind of some history from when the comic strip came out. Children were often placed in orphanages for a variety of reasons. Women did not have access to birth control, and so they had less control over when they were able to get pregnant. Since this was a severe economic depression, people were out of work and could not afford to feed their families. Many people felt that the only options they had to give were to give their children up for adoption, hoping that other families would take the children on. Working conditions for those that did have jobs were also really bad. Low levels of employees worked in very unsafe conditions. People were injured to the point of no longer being able to work or were even killed. So, for the same reasons, kids were put up for adoption so that they could be fed. Okay. Unfortunately, the orphanages were very overpopulated, and children were given away to families who would use them as maids or laborers at very young ages.
Oh.
Now, in this, what's different is she is not in an orphanage.
She's in foster care.
Foster care, which is a different system. It's usually a much smaller environment, although the foster home that she is in still has a lot of children.
like 3 other children.
There were like 4 or 5.
Oh, yeah, 4 other children in it.
Right. So we still see children in the foster care system. There are a lot of kids in the foster care system. And
she's not even taken care of. Like
exactly. Often, I don't want to say oftentimes because we don't know that for sure, but occasionally what will happen are these homes are run by people who are just looking for an easy paycheck and aren't really interested in the child's needs, which kind of feeds into the fact that Annie has made it 10 years into her life without anyone noticing that she can't read.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because she is not... When you see her, like, reading the message from her parents, I honestly thought she was lying when she said, I can't read, because she's been reading that. But then you told me she's just memorized it, because she's been reading it for the last 10 years.
Yeah, someone's been reading it to her for 10 years, and so she's memorized it. So if we want to compare it to the other musicals that have come out, because there, like I've said, there have been 3 total, including this one. 2 of them are more set in the time period of the Great Depression, which we also are going to talk about next week. I'm so excited.
Yay!
I think this movie does a really good job of modernizing a story that is historically so rooted in the time frame that it was originally set. I just love the updated version of I Think I'm Gonna Like It Here.
Yeah, that is better.
Why don't you tell the audience a bit about that song? Tell them about how it was in the original movie, and then tell them about what it's like in this movie.
Well, in this movie, it's like she's showing her all the like cool technology stuff, but in the other movie, the first movie, they're like saying, they're like showing her all the employees or servants.
Right.
And it's like,
and that's just not
it's not as fun.
Well, that, and you don't see that in modern households anymore.
No.
Modern households don't have, tons of servants working in the house at all times.
Yeah,
whereas
and
he lives more in like a smart house.
And if this was made in 2023, this year, the driver would be replaced with a Tesla. Those were Mama's words, not mine.
So if you didn't laugh, it's my fault. Anyways, another thing that I would like to say about this musical is I think it's a literal crime that Tracy Toms is in this movie and she doesn't sing.
Yeah, it is.
Tracy Toms she has a beautiful singing voice, and she plays this character that is pretending to be Annie's mom. She's not really. She's been hired by the man that works for Will Stacks to get rid of Annie because she's no longer, working for him. Like, she's not giving him the popularity that she was originally brought into the house to give him.
Yeah, and more like she's just living there because Will Stacks wants her to.
Yeah. No, he has reached a point where he loves her as a daughter. Anyway, so they have her playing Annie's fake mom, but she does not sing even one single note. Meanwhile, Cameron Diaz is in this movie.
Can you not keep burning Cameron Diaz, please?
Look, I think Cameron Diaz is a very good actor, and she does a really good job of providing a perspective of Miss Hannigan that we don't always see. But she
gotta put the butt in there.
She is not my favorite actor. And with this being a musical, I feel like there could have been better people to fill that role. And well, it's just the truth. And also saying, like, you can't say, like, oh, well, she's the big name. No, you've got Jamie Foxx, Oscar award-winning actor. You've got Quvenzhané Wallis, who, yes, has not done a ton, but at that time, she was super popular because she had just been the youngest person nominated for an Oscar. You've got Rose Byrne, who wasn't the name she is now, but she was still, like, noticeable. She had done Bridesmaids. I just don't think we needed Cameron Diaz for that part. I'm sorry. And I'm also very biased towards another Miss Hannigan that we will discuss next week.
Yeah. Okay, what I want to say is I'm very upset that We Got Annie did not make it in, but if it was in there, Grace would just be singing to a bunch of computers.
Well, I think that would have worked because don't they make that joke throughout the movie that she doesn't have any friends?
Oh, I feel so bad for her now. Oh gosh, I forgot about that joke. I'm sorry.
Well, I think because that song is actually not in the Broadway show that I'm aware of. And I think they wrote that for that original movie because I could be telling tales out of story, but telling tales out of school is the phrase. But the actor that played Grace in the original movie, she was a very well-trained dancer. And so they did a lot of stuff to show that off.
Yeah.
Whereas, Rose Byrne, I would not say she's the best dancer, would you?
Oh, no.
Ruby does not want to be a part of the conversation where we're bashing actors.
Yeah, I really don't.
Let's end on a positive note. What is it about this version of Annie that you love so much?
I love that, it's more, accurate to what would happen in real life.
In modern times,
in modern times. But, in the other one, it's oh, he has a whole, 2,000... Oh, and they make that joke in the movie, too.
Finish your sentence.
Okay, yeah. Okay. In the other one, they have, 1,000 servants, and it's weird.
Oh, yeah.
It's weird.
Yes,
you can't remember everyone's names. And in that one, and in the modern-ish version, it's basically where you don't have to remember everyone's name because there's barely anyone to remember.
and like you were alluding to, they make the joke in the modern movie of what did you expect me to have? Just hundreds of servants everywhere?
No, she said, don't you have people working for you? 1,000 servants?
That was it. All right. Is there anything else you want to add about this?
I wish the song Sign was in there because I don't care what you're going to say. I wanted the song Sign in there.
Sign?
Yeah. The one where Warbucks is trying to tell
we'll discuss that song next week. I love that song.
Yeah. I just wish that was in there.
It's a great song. But I would not have wanted Cameron Diaz to sing it.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're ending on positive notes. I think Cameron Diaz does a great job with acting in this movie.
Yeah. I do like Lou's character. It's just I don't think he's the most important character.
He is an unnecessary character. He doesn't really add much to the story. He's kind of comic relief, if anything, but I think there are enough comedic things throughout the movie.
I feel like the person who works at the restaurant, that's a more important character.
And he has very little to do in the movie.
Yeah. And he's a more important character than Lou.
Well, because we were talking about how Lou's character is kind of mimicked in the musical with Mr. Bundles, which, at least Mr. Bundles served a purpose. He helped hide. I guess you could say
Lou did serve a purpose by trying to help her get money.
Yeah. Which, okay, but I don't think he had to be through the whole movie. I don't think you had to make him obsessed with Miss Hannigan. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like the guy who works at the restaurant is more important because he always tells Annie, I'm sorry, but your parents didn't come today.
Yeah. And she could have gotten her money from there.
Yeah.
She could have gone to him and said, hey, I can bus tables or I can wash dishes for tips or something.
don't want to be relabeling expression dates.
Right.
Expired dates, I mean.
Right. All right, let's get into our final decision on moving panels.
Man.
We have bag it, stack it, or trade it. Bag it means it is a keeper. You're going to adopt this musical. You're going to take it home into your smart mansion, and you're going to sing about how you're going to teach it to swim.
Oh, that's a good joke.
Thanks. Stack it does not mean well stacks. It means that you're going to toss it in a pile, but you like it. But you're not going to treasure it. You're just going to keep it somewhere, and you might come back to it from time to time. And trade it means that you are going to give it to a group home.
I'm going to give her to foster care.
No, remember, Miss Hannigan's threatening to put her into a group home.
Yeah. Okay. I would say stack it. I'm not obsessed with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to adopt it. I'm not going to do stuff like that. I'm going to stack it because I don't watch it that much, really.
Right. You enjoy it. We are going to go see the musical at the Fox later this year, which we're excited about.
Yeah.
So stack it. I'm going to agree with you. I think this musical does a great job at modernizing an old story. But if I'm going to give my personal opinion, I don't think it does as good of a job as the 1982 version. And mostly that is because it holds a sentimental place in my heart.
Because you thought it had because of camera
I mean, we will discuss Carol Burnett next week.
Oh, gosh.
Okay.
Oh,
well,
no.
Thank you so much for joining me, Ruby. Thank you to listeners for putting up with our giggly, musical-loving selves. And just thank you, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
You're welcome. For Moving Panels, I'm Bethany Wells, here for Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
Please don't cut that part out.
What seems to be the problem, pal?
There's just so much pain in the world, so many issues. I don't think I can bear it.
Hell, friendo, it sounds like you could use a dose of pop culture roulette.
Pop culture roulette? What's that? Some sort of pop culture themed podcast or something?
That's right, sonny boy. When hope seems far, dive into some PCR.
But I already get my entertainment news from Variety.
Huh, that's pretty good. If you're a chucklehead, PCR gives you news you need, condensed, unfiltered, and raw, from three nerds who know a little something about something.
Wow, okay, sign me up.
That's the spirit. Pop Culture Roulette. New episodes every Monday, available on all major podcast directories.